Hello, everyone. My name is Alaina G. Levine, and I'm president of Quantum Success Solutions and author of the book called Networking for Nerds. I'm truly delighted to be here with you today to talk with you about a topic that is especially important in today's changing world, and that is, of course, successfully navigating the international job search. I'd like to thank my partners in this effort, the AIP Career Network, which includes all of the organizations and the publication that you see at the bottom of your screen. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for you to view afterwards. I wanted you to know that. And if you have any questions while we are migrating forward today, please feel free and ask them in the question console of the dashboard for the webinar. So with what we're talking about today, we're going to be discussing a lot of different topics that will help you find and land a job, and then also keep building your career when you're moving across borders, country borders around the world. The reality, of course, as we give this webinar today, literally today, is that we're in an ever-changing landscape, and I know that you know that. We have to be mindful that change these days in terms of economies, in terms of geographies, in terms of politics and everything of that all those issues that impact your job search and your career advancement, those are changing potentially almost daily. And so I wanted you to know that I'm aware of that. I'm aware of what's happening in the world today, and you are too. I know you are. And so what I wanted to do with this webinar is to give you strategies and tactics that will help you whatever the landscape is that we're dealing with. And there's going to be barriers, there's going to be roadblocks, but with the type of strategies and tactics that I'm presenting to you, there's still a possibility to move forward, even if there are what appear to be barriers in the world landscape right now. So the idea, of course, that I'm going to be talking about, the majority of what I want to talk to you about, is how, especially with an international job search, how vital it is for you to ensure that you're not just looking for advertised jobs, but that you are informing the publics, the employment publics, the people that and the organizations that are going to potentially employ you now and in the future, about who you are and what your value proposition is. And this is going to be done through networking and reputation management. So we have to make sure that we're not just looking at job ads, but that we are actively doing networking, because that's the way we're going to get these opportunities. And that's the way we're also going to be able to create jobs for ourselves in this ever-changing landscape. So our goal is to become what I call a known quantity in our field and in our vocation, which will ultimately give us access to both jobs that are advertised as well as hidden opportunities, and it could even give us access to potential opportunities that don't even exist yet. And I'm going to give you examples of that. So we're not going to rely just on the job adverts alone, and we're going to do research ahead of time, and really, if we start our plan now, we can potentially move forward in the direction that we want to go, and also in the time frame that we're interested in. As we're going forward, I wanted to just give you some data of note, which I think is really interesting. You know, first of all, I found out, and this is not that surprising, although I thought this was kind of a bit of a low number, that in 2015, 3.3% of the world's population lived outside their country of origin, mostly moving for better economic and social opportunities. This is according to the UN Population Fund. I would have actually thought it was higher. But amongst scientists, and in particular physicists, according to the AIP Statistical Research Center, they produced a report in January of 2016. They found that of the people who had received a PhD in physics from a U.S. institution in the years 2013 and 14, 23% of non-U.S. citizens left the U.S. So for the people who got those PhDs, if they were non-U.S. citizens to begin with, they went and left the U.S. And this is the population that we're talking about. We're talking about people who migrate across country borders to get jobs. And what's interesting to me is that the most common initial employment for those who did leave the U.S. was for a postdoc appointment. 48% of all PhD recipients in physics are non-U.S. citizens. That's truly amazing. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about world migration. Nature did a survey in 2012 of 2,300 of its readers, and they found that approximately 36.4% of its readers were living outside the country of their upbringing. upbringing, and only 64% were not living outside the country of their upbringing. I would have thought it was going to be reversed, interestingly enough. Most people said that they were interested in relocating. They said they would either actively seek an opportunity to relocate or would consider relocation for the right position to another country, equaling up to 62%. So we're talking about people who are looking globally. Honestly, we have to do that. Science is a global endeavor anyway. And I also found one of the other things I found interesting about the survey is that they asked the people who respond to the survey, what countries would you be interested in relocating to? And this was for all of the people that they asked. And as you can see, it went down, it started in Australia and New Zealand, because who wouldn't want to go to New Zealand and Australia? And then Canada and US and the UK and Germany. And in Japan, about 17% of the readers who responded said that they were interested in moving to Japan. The Nature Biotechnology, there was a paper in Nature Biotechnology in 2012 where the authors did a survey. They looked at data from over 17,000 scientists in 16 countries taken in 2011, and they found that half or more of the scientists from the majority of those countries have international experience, including 78% of Switzerland's scientists have international experience, and 75% of India's scientists have international experience. And the country of origin differs from where they are now in that, for example, in Switzerland, more than 50% of scientists in Switzerland are not from Switzerland. And in Canada, almost 47%, Australia 45%, US 30, almost 39%, and Sweden 38%. It really shows you how much people are moving, particularly for career opportunities, and in particular in the sciences. And emigrating scientists in India, approximately 40% of scientists who lived in India at age 18, in other words, people who grew up in India, are now working or studying outside the country. And in Switzerland, that was only 33%, and in the Netherlands and the UK, it was 25%. The lowest number of emigrants came from Japan, with only 3% of people who grew up in Japan saying that they are now living or working outside the country. So those are just some data points I wanted you to have, because I wanted you to be aware of what we're talking about. We're talking about a huge number of people who are moving across borders for jobs, for career opportunities, and this can be one of you. Now, in my own research as a journalist and as a career consultant, I've had the opportunity to talk with a lot of different people about their own career development and their own career experiences. And I want to give you a few examples of people who have very successfully navigated an international job search from my own research. So the first person I wanted to share with you a story of is a woman named Zoe. So Zoe she is Greek. She grew up in Greece. She got her bachelor's degree at the University of Athens, and then did a PhD at Heidelberg. She's a bioscientist, and her goal after leaving Athens was really to come back to Greece. That was what she wanted to do. And by the time she got her postdoc at Yale, she was planning very hard and really putting together a very strategic campaign to make sure that she would be able to come back to her home nation for a job. So how did she do this? Well, the first thing that she did over the period of time that she was not in Greece was that she always stayed connected to Greek academic institutions. She always maintained connections with her mentors and with her colleagues at the university there, and whenever she came home on holiday, she would reach out to them and say, I'm coming back to Greece, can I give a colloquium? I'd love to meet with you, I'd love to give a talk. And people were very open to that. People were very happy to have that. And that's a really great tip for you to be aware of also for yourself, is that honestly, when you are looking to migrate to another country, if you have the opportunity to go to that country, or if you are from that country and are living in another country right now and you have the chance to go back to your home nation, reach out to academia or industry, honestly, or even regional and industrial communities that are doing networking and things like that, such as industry and professional associations, and offer to give talks, offer to give colloquia. So what Zoe did was she started giving colloquia, and then she started giving more colloquia, and then people heard about her and they started inviting her for colloquia. And this begot more colloquia, begot more opportunities for conversations, and it really clarified her niche expertise in Greece, in the biosciences, in her specific area of the life sciences. So by the time she finished her postdoc at Yale, 5 years after she had left the nation of Greece, I believe it was 5 years, she actually had a position waiting for her in a Greek federal research institution. And this is interesting because, as you know, Greece has not been doing well economically in the last few years. So to be able to say that she was able to land a job in a Greek federal institution is tremendous. And it really goes to speak to how she went about producing or creating opportunities for her to clarify the value that she could provide as a life scientist in these networks, in these different areas and within the networks of people that were in the life sciences community in Greece. And the position that she ended up getting was very, very much tied to her area of expertise, and it was basically waiting for her. This is the kind of power that you can have even in a bad economy. This is the kind of power that you can have as a professional moving across country borders. And if you engage in networking early on, then the idea would be by the time you're ready to come back to your nation or go to another nation, they will already know you. You will be that known quantity that I mentioned earlier, and people will be ready and excited for you to join their team. Now, as we're going forward, let's address the potential scenarios that we could potentially be working on if we are moving across borders. And so, you know, I'm a math major. I'm a former math major. My degree's in mathematics, so I'm constantly thinking in terms of variables. So I was thinking, what are the different ways that people could move across borders? So here's a few that I was thinking of. So let's say you're a citizen of country A and you want to move to country B. Maybe you're a citizen of A, you're already living in B and you want to stay in B. Or maybe you're living in B and you want to return back to your home nation. Or maybe you're a citizen of country A, you've been living in B, maybe you've been doing your graduate work here, maybe in the States or in the UK or in India or wherever, and you want to move to Japan or you want to move to New Zealand. So you want to move to country C. So these are the kinds of scenarios that I'm thinking about today as I'm working with you on how to navigate that job search across borders. Now, what's really important for you to recognize is that as a scientist or an engineer, you bring a lot of value to your organization, meaning the university, the company, the lab, whatever it is, the organization that you work for, and you bring a lot of value to the region and the country that you're representing and that you're planning to go to. This is very important. So what the key here is to think about how you could potentially add value to that region or that nation by being in that nation, by coming to that nation, or by coming back to that nation if you want to go back to your home country. The way to think about this is the following. See, as a scientist or an engineer, you are the value creators of society. So companies are built around what you discover and what you create and what you innovate. And when a company is looking to expand, when a region is looking to increase its tax base, it always looks to the highly educated employees and the talent first, because you are the ones who actually can increase the tax base in a particular region. So you're actually worth money to geographic regions. So let's just use Tucson, Arizona as an example. That's where I live. I live in Tucson, Arizona. And we have a lot of optics companies in Tucson and in the greater Arizona area. And we have what's called a cluster of optics companies. And a cluster is an important word for you to be aware of, particularly as you're navigating this international job search. A cluster, very simply, is what it sounds like it is. It's a critical mass of companies or institutions of an industry in a particular geographic region. So clusters are tied to geography. So in Tucson, we have an optics cluster. We have a critical mass, a large number of optics companies, optics startups. Now, with all these optics companies and optics startups here, to make sure that these companies continue to grow and expand, it's absolutely necessary for them to continue to attract top talent to the area. They need optical scientists and photonics engineers to move to Tucson, to stay in Tucson, to fuel those companies and to contribute to the tax base. And the more of you, the more of those highly educated scientists and engineers that move to the region, the more opportunity it's going to bring to the region for more companies to come here. Because if I'm company X and I'm looking to move my headquarters or to open up a new shop or a new division in a new region, what I'm looking for is talent. I need to make sure that I have the skilled employees to actually fill those positions. So I'm going to be looking for geographic regions that are naturally attracting a lot of talent, so that if I move there, I know I will have the talent to succeed. So it's a never-ending wheel of the individual scientists and engineers contributing to the tax base, being attracted to the region because of the high number of businesses that are in that particular area, that particular field, that particular industry, and then that industry looking to expand by attracting more scientists and engineers to the region. And since you are highly educated, you command higher salaries, which means you pay more in taxes, which means that my geography does better in terms of its tax base. So it is a never-ending wheel that is honestly fueled by money. And if you realize that as a scientist and engineer, you actually have a powerful position in that wheel, you can start to see how you would be attractive to different regions. So you encourage economic growth both in established institutions. You could also even create your own startup. And as a result of this, when you're looking to move to new regions, to new countries, you want to reach out to the people, the economic development directors, the people who work in chambers of commerce, the people who work for cluster organizations, which I'm going to talk more about in a moment. You want to reach out to them, and you want them to know that you exist and that you could potentially help them in their endeavors in building the industry strengths in that community. I'm going to get to that more in a moment, but I just wanted to give you a taste of that. Now, we want to think about what value can we provide. So we want to be thinking about what is our specific brand. Remember, you've heard me talk about brands before, so you know that a brand is simply a promise of value. So I have a brand and you have a brand, and our brand, my brand, your brand, is our promise to provide excellence, dependability, and expertise in everything that we do. Now, our unique brand includes all of the different types of problems that we solve, the types of skills that we have, the experience that we have, and this is and also our passions and what we actually want to do with our skills and our experience and our love. And so what we want to do is we want to identify, understand, and then be able to articulate to different people, to different parties, what our unique brand is. And if you can correlate that need of what the region is, or that institution, or that type of institution, or that industry with your desired region, in your desired region with what you do, that's where you're going to be able to think beyond the job. That's where you're actually going to get hidden opportunities. What we're doing is we're looking for opportunities where we can solve problems in novel ways. And in doing so, we're also showing people that we're committed to and invested in a particular region. I'm going to get back to that investment in a moment, but I want to give you an example of somebody who realized what his unique brand was and then sought out people to find out what their problems were so that he could show them how he could solve them with his brand, right? And that's what we're talking about here. So this is the story of a nanotechnologist. So this is a PhD student who was getting a PhD in nanotechnology, and he was very, very interested in working in medical devices. This is a true story, by the way. Of course, all my stories are true, but this is actually a story I wrote about in a Science magazine article. And so this nanotechnology PhD student, interested in moving into medical devices, but had never worked in medical devices. He had no experience in it. He didn't understand much about it at all, but he really, really was truly interested in it. And that's where he thought that he could really, really invest his passion best in. So what he did was thinking about how he could move into medical devices with no experience. He started doing literature searches, and he started reading articles and journal papers and looking for scientists and engineers who were working on medical devices. And he looked to see if he could find people who were working on medical devices but were not including any sort of nanotechnology in their problem solving. So they were doing medical devices, but they weren't doing anything with nanotech. And that's where the opportunity lied, because he saw that if they were doing medical devices and they didn't have a nanotechnologist helping them, and therefore were not doing anything with nanotechnology, then he could perhaps provide a very unique solution to a problem. He could help build medical devices with his nanotechnology expertise. So he reached out to a number of different professors at universities and emailed them, and instead of saying, he was looking for a postdoc, instead of saying, do you know of any postdocs, do you know of any openings, can I get a job in your lab, how can I get a job with you, he instead wrote, I'm a nanotechnologist, I see you work in medical devices, I think there might be an opportunity for collaboration here because I could see how I might be able to assist you in building medical devices with a nanotechnology aspect to them, and I would love to learn more about medical devices. Would you be open to an exploratory conversation? Could we have a conversation in which we discuss the potential to partner in some way? And not surprisingly, that email netted him a number of responses. People actually responded to that email and said, that sounds interesting. Yes, I'd love to have a conversation with you. He wasn't promising anything and he wasn't asking for anything. He was saying, let's explore the potential to collaborate. And he got an email, he got a response from a professor at a university in Boston. And she was a mechanical engineer. She was working on medical devices, and she was intrigued because she could see, after having the conversation with him, she could see how if he were to join her lab, he would teach her and all of her team about nanotechnology so that they could then incorporate nanotechnology in the medical device design. And she saw that she could then help teach him about medical devices, which ultimately would help him be even better at teaching nanotechnology to her and her team. And in the end, she created a postdoc appointment for him. So to be clear, there was no advertisement and there was no official formal opening in her lab for a postdoc appointment. It was created for him by her because of this exploratory conversation, because he reached out to her, communicated his brand, and showed how he could solve her problems in novel ways, and she was intrigued and she wanted that. And that's what most people are looking for. They're always looking for new people who can help them solve problems in new ways, and so they're always looking for those potential problem solvers. And those problem solvers can be diversified. So even though this example of this nanotechnology moving to medical devices is not specific to moving across country lines, the example is still relevant in our discussion, because if you can communicate, just like Zoe did, if you can communicate your brand in a way to this university in this country or this institution in this other country, or even to this field, even to the network of leaders in the field in this country, that you would potentially be an asset to that field in this country, then an opportunity could be potentially created for you. You could create it together, or it could be created for you, or you might even create it yourself by asking for it. That's the power of this type of networking. So that's what I wanted you to be thinking about as we get started. And now let's put together the search plan. So as we start going forward with our search plan, we're always going to start with initial regional research. I want to understand a little bit more about the country, the nation, and the continent, and the government that I'm interested in going to or going back to. So first of all, I definitely need to understand the residency requirements and implications associated with me working as a scientist or an engineer in that nation. For example, I might need to know, in fact, I wouldn't say might, I'd say I definitely would need to know, do I need to be a citizen of that nation to be funded by the government? If I'm going to get a grant, from the government, from the federal government in that country, do I need to be a citizen? And if so, how long do I have to live in the country before I can get funded? Or if I don't have to be, how long do I have to live in the country to be funded? Are there special paperwork or requirements to work there? Or specifically, if I'm coming from a specific country, so if I'm moving from the US to the UK, are there certain requirements that are required for American citizens to work in the UK versus Indian citizens to work in the UK? This is something that I would want to know. And then who's responsible for these requirements? Do I have to do it? Does my institution do it? Do we do it together at the same time? Can it be done by them first? Can it be done by me first before I even have a job or even a discussion in hand? These are the kinds of things that you want to look into. Another thing I want to research, of course, is the economic and political climate. I want to know who's hiring. I want to know what is the state of science funding in this particular nation and who does it. Is it done by federal agencies? Is it done by industry partners? Is it done by federal and private-public partnerships? There are a number of nations in Europe, for example, that offer grants to researchers and the grants are given by public-private partnerships. They are fueled in part by the government, they're fueled by banks, and they're fueled by other parties. So to know that, this would be something that would be very, very useful for me to be aware of. And honestly, given like what we talked about at the beginning of this webinar, and also what we know about that's happening on the globe right now, literally today, I need to know what's happening in the government. I need to know, what is the climate for science funding? What is the climate like for researchers, for scientists and engineers, and for industry scientists and engineers, not just for scientists and engineers in academia. If I'm a scientist, if I'm an engineer and I'm moving to this nation, or I want to stay in this nation, I need to know what's happening in the government as it relates to all scientists, whether they work for industry or work for in an academic institution. And another really great question that you would want to ask is there an organization that recruits for that region? Because there are often organizations that do recruit for particular geographic areas and are very, very interested in talking with individual scientists and engineers who want to move or want to stay in a particular region. For example, recently I was talking to somebody who works in the optics and photonics cluster in Berlin, and he was telling me that there was an organization, I believe it's called Berlin Talent, that specifically exists to attract talented scientists and engineers, as well as other highly educated potential employees to the Berlin area. And so if you were interested in moving to Berlin, or even Germany, I would say to connect with this organization, Berlin Talent, to let them know why you want to move to Berlin, what it is about this region, what it is about Germany that is exciting you, where you see the match between what you do and what problems need to be solved, and what you like to do once you're there. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said it's important as you're interacting with these different organizations and representatives of geographies and economic development organizations and institutions as well, including academic institutions and companies, to let them know what it is about that region that is of interest to you. So it's not enough to say that I want to work as an optical scientist, but I need to know why you want to work as an optical scientist in Berlin. What is it about my region that really attracts you? Do you have family ties here? Is it there's something you've read about how Berlin is just, really investing in startups right now and you want to be part of that energy? What is it about this region? Show me that you are not just looking for a job anywhere, but that the region itself is of great importance to you. Now, this tactic, of course, to show them that you are invested and wedded and committed to the region is very much like the same tactic that you use when you're going for a job, when you show the institution or the university or the company in the interview and in your cover letter that you're wedded and committed and invested in the company, right? No company and no employer wants to know that you are using me, if you're applying for a job with my organization, that you're using me as a stepping stone to work for another company in my region or in my field. They want to know that I want to know, as the company in this equation, I want to know that you're interested in my company, and I want to know why my company is of interest to you specifically. So it's the same type of thing that you want to do with moving across the world, is you want to tell people what is it about that particular region that really excites you, why do you want to be there? And when you share that with people, economic development professionals, people who are specifically recruiting people to that region, as well as the scientists and engineers themselves, the people in the universities, the people in the industry organizations, and the people in the companies, and even in the labs and agencies, they're going to get excited and they're going to see that you're in for the long haul, and they're going to move mountains. They're going to do what they can to get you into the organization. That's a really important thing to make sure that you share. Share with them why you're wedded to that region, as well as why you're wedded to that particular organization. I also want to research the sector climate of the desired region. So what I mean here is the sector meaning academia versus industry versus government. So in academia, I want to see where are the jobs and the research groups located. Are they located for an academic sector in a particular country? Are they in universities? Are they institutions? Are there private and public partnerships that exist between researchers? Who is publishing and where are they publishing? This is a really interesting thing to see. Are most scientists in academia in nation X, are they publishing only in journals in that nation's language, or are they publishing in journals that are read by people around the world who are multilingual? What is the quote-unquote tenure system like, right? This is interesting because the tenure system in the United States is very different than the tenure system in the UK versus the tenure system in Germany versus the tenure system in other nations around the world. So you want to understand what the tenure system is like, and so that you can be prepared for that, so you can understand what the different words mean. Like when somebody says when somebody says, well, would you be interested in a lectureship? What does that mean? It means something different in the United States than it does in the UK, versus a fellowship, which also means something different in the UK versus the US and other places as well. For industry, I want to see where are the jobs in the companies. So it is relevant for you to look at job boards. It is relevant for you to see what jobs are advertised. And this goes for any type of job. This goes for jobs in any area of physics, as well as I know some of you listening today are in medical physics. This goes for medical physics too. I want to see where are the jobs. So I'm going to look at the job boards. I'm going to look at the hospitals. I'm going to look at the universities. I'm going to see what they're advertising, because it's going to give me a wealth of information. And I want to see what organizations are actually looking to hire. And then I'm going to see, are there opportunities for me to interact with those organizations, with those industry organizations, those companies, those hospitals, and so on and so forth, in advance of me actually doing a full-time position there. And this could be in the form of an internship. So many companies offer internships even across country borders. And it could also be in the form of a travel fellowship. I've even heard of organizations, not necessarily companies, although I wouldn't be surprised if companies do this, but I know of universities and economic development agencies that offer travel fellowships for people to come to regions to learn a little bit more about them. So how can I get this information? I'm going to set up Google News Alerts. So not just Google Alerts, but do Google News Alerts. Take a look at the news that's coming out of that geography, out of that region, and take a look at the job ads in the major publications. What departments, what hospitals, what universities, what industries, and what divisions within those industry organizations are building capacity, and note what is missing. What departments are not building capacity? What organizations are growing and what aren't? So take a look at that. But the Google News Alerts is going to be very useful to be able to do that highly localized news search. Let's say you were interested in moving to Canberra in Australia, to be able to set up a Google News alert for all sorts of different types of business news and science news coming out of Canberra. This would be very, very relevant for you, because you'll find out about hidden opportunities. You'll also find out about the players, the leaders, the thought leaders, the movers and the shakers in that city and in that region, so that there could be people that you could reach out to explore the potential to collaborate with. So the Google News Alerts based on region is going to be very, very useful for you. And I also want to read, in addition to the business newspapers and the regional other types of publications, I want to read the economic development group publications that are coming out of that region. So and looking at specifically the recruiting organization. So I mentioned Talent Berlin, but there's another really interesting organization, Bizkaya. So Bizkaya is an organization that specifically exists to recruit talent, particularly scientists and engineers, so highly skilled, highly educated talent, to to a certain area of Spain, so to the Basque country in the area of Spain. And so they actually go to conferences. They have booths at conferences where they regularly reach out to people to talk to them about why the Basque Country is such an exciting, energetic community, why there are so many scientists here, how many scientists are here, what are the companies, what are the focus groups, what are the fields that people are in. They are actively recruiting people. So to know that they are there, if you were interested in moving to the Basque Country, would be very, very helpful for you, and to be able to read their publications to know what are the issues and the trends in hiring, which companies have just established themselves in the Basque Country, which companies are growing, which companies just got grants, so they're going to be building capacity in this area. That's going to be very, very useful. Additionally, I do recommend also taking a look at the region's major foundations and funding agencies, reading their publications and taking a look at their websites. And then, of course, the annual reports or the research reports of targeted institutions. So if you were interested in moving, for example, to the university, to Tucson, Arizona, and you wanted to learn more about Tucson, it would do you a great service if you read the research magazine of the University of Arizona, which is the major university in Tucson where I live. So taking a look at those annual reports. And what we're looking for is data about growth, data about expansion, and information about people who would be interested, who you could potentially reach out to, who would be interested in having a conversation with you about you moving to that region, about you moving and working for that organization. Now, networking across borders, networking via LinkedIn, networking via email, via phone, via Skype is fantastic and is not invaluable. In fact, it is invaluable, but nothing beats that face-to-face contact. So especially as you're trying to establish your brand and communicate what it is that you could do for other parties. So what you can do is, if there's any way that you can actually get to the country in any form or fashion, this is going to help you, because you want to start interacting with people there on the ground so that they know who you are and what you're doing, and they're going to start thinking about you. And really what that does is that face-to-face networking, it not only establishes you and builds your reputation as a known quantity in your field, in that community, but it brings you to the forefront of their mind. So when there is an opportunity, they're going to think of you first. So what we're going to do is we want to see, well, how can we get to the country, right? So we're going to look for, we could potentially look for short-term projects or opportunities to speak at colloquia in those nations. So reach out to the countries and reach out to the universities and to the companies, especially if you happen to know that you're going to be traveling nearby, or if you're going to be going to the country, volunteer to speak at colloquia, volunteer to present a talk, volunteer to meet with colleagues, volunteer to meet with students, to talk to them, even if it's an informal meeting. Look for short-term projects. Maybe you could do like a summer project, a summer research project at a university in that country. Look into fellowships that could potentially get you there. For example, the Fulbright Fellowship is a worldwide fellowship that allows people to, both students as well as established professionals, to go and do projects in other countries. So you could look into that as an opportunity. And seek out other types of leadership fellowships that could potentially get you to that region. So, for example, there might be, let's say there's a conference or an organization that focuses on, let's say, early career scientists under 40 years old. There might be, you could do a Google search for this, you could find fellowships for scientists who are under 40 years old, which allows, if you win the fellowship, you could travel to the country, you could go potentially on a study tour, or have the chance to meet with collaborators from this particular industry or from this particular field. So look into the opportunities. Network with people in your field, with leaders in your field who live in the desired region or who are from the desired region. So interestingly, whenever I talk about networking, when I'm talking specifically about moving to area X, I want to move to city X, my networking plan always consists of 2 tracks. I'm networking with people who are physically there right now, and I'm networking with people who are not there. Because interestingly, you know, science is small, the world is small, we're all connected by no more than 6 degrees, but science is even smaller, and your field is even smaller than that, and your subfield is even smaller than that, which means that there's always going to be people, all roads will lead to the city or the region or the nation that you want to go to with your networking in other ways as well. And then what I mean is, you're going to talk to people who are literally living in city X right now, but you also want to talk to people who are living in country A and country B and country C, and in conversing with them, find out if they know people who are from the country that you want to go to or the region that you want to go to, because I guarantee that they almost always will have at least one person, if not 1 degree away from them, then 2 or 3 degrees away from them, that know somebody who is in that region that they could introduce you to. So I'm going to interact with former colleagues, mentors, and proteges. Reach out to people that you've met at conferences. Reach out to the former colloquium speakers. If there's been a colloquium speaker at your university, or if you've already graduated and it's now your alma mater, You can go through the list of colloquia online, and you can see that Alaina Levine from the United States visited your university in March of 2016. Reach out to Dr. Levine, reach out to Alaina, and say, you know, I see that you visited. I wasn't able to attend the colloquium when you were here because of another engagement, but I'm really interested in what you work on, and I'd love to speak with you. Would you be open to an informal conversation to explore the potential to collaborate? And in particular, I'm very interested in moving to Tucson, Arizona, and I'd love to get a little bit of more of a sense of what it's like to live there and work there. And almost guarantee people will respond to that. So you're going to network with people that you've talked to in the past. You're going to find networking nodes, and what I mean by that, networking nodes could include conferences, they could include organizations. It's pretty much anything that aggregates people together. And so at conferences, when I want to network with people from a particular nation, I'm specifically going to look for people from that country to network with. So I'm going to, if I'm going to the conference, and I'm going to talk to you in a moment about not going to the conference and still networking at it, if I'm going to the conference, I'm going to look for people who are speaking from that country, from that region, from that institution. I'm going to look for people who are giving posters from that country or who might just be attending. And I'm going to reach out to them in advance. I'm going to make appointments, coffee appointments. I'm going to attend their talks. I'm going to, at the exhibit hall, if there are country pavilions or booths, if there are booths associated with foundations or funding agencies, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to ask them if I can talk to them and get a really detailed understanding of what they're doing there. The exhibit hall is especially helpful in terms of networking because guess what? Those people that are in the exhibit hall, they paid to put a booth there because they want to promote themselves to you. So they are very open to having conversations. In addition, there are a lot of conferences that host events that are sponsored by national organizations, meaning organizations from other countries or organizations that are specifically trying to bring people to specific nations or regions. For example, I noticed that the American Association for the Advancement of Science, almost every year that I've noticed it, almost every year that I've attended, there's been a breakfast that's hosted by the Helmholtz Association, which is based out of Germany. That's an organization that is interested in bringing more scientists to Germany, so this would be a good opportunity for me to attend that event. And it also, I've noticed that a lot of conferences have informal or not even ad hoc, but informal events that are not necessarily sponsored by the organization that's putting on the conference, but are taking place nonetheless because there's an aggregation of people at that conference. So for example, I've been to a couple of conferences where I noticed, and by the way, these are just advertised on Twitter, or they're advertised on Facebook. They might not even be advertised in the program. They might not be advertised in any official media that's coming from the association that's hosting the conference. But what I saw was, for example, a conference that I went to, I've been to a few times, there is a dinner that is hosted by scientists and engineers from China. So it's the Chinese delegate association of this particular group, and they're inviting anybody who is from China or interested in China to come to this dinner to meet other scientists, engineers from China. I saw a similar type of thing for Korea. I saw a similar type of thing for Australia. I saw a similar type of thing for Singapore, for example. So a lot of different countries do this type of thing. So really follow the Twitter feeds and see if you see a networking dinner or an event or a breakfast that's hosted by or is specifically featuring a nation or is calling people from that nation to attend, you can always reach out to them and say, you know, I'm really interested in moving to China. Do you mind if I join you for this dinner? And I'm sure that they would say yes. Regional professional societies can also be really helpful. You can find these associations both in country via LinkedIn as well as through your own Google searches. So get on the listservs, email these leaders. These are economic development organizations. These are regional organizations devoted to particular science, particular engineering areas. For example, the European Geophysical Union, if you were interested in moving to Europe, that kind of thing would be the organization you'd want to connect with. Volunteer to write articles for their newsletters or blogs, or write articles about blogs from conferences so that you get your name out there, so that people in that community get to know who you are. And if you can't go to a conference, guess what? You can still reach out anyway. I was interested recently I was writing an article, actually a couple of years ago, I was writing an article about, I believe it was nanotechnology in Asia and the different types of activity that's going on throughout Asia in nanotechnology. And I started doing just general Google searches to look for scientists who were based in Asia who were doing nanotechnology research. And I found a conference that was taking place in Taiwan that was dedicated to nanotechnology. It was dedicated, in fact, to the area of nanotechnology I wanted to cover in my article. And of course, I didn't have the money and I didn't have the time and the ability to go to this conference in Taiwan. But as you know, the entire conference program was listed on the website of the conference. So I went through the website program and I started reaching out to these scientists who were representing Taiwan at this conference in Taiwan. And I said, I'd love to talk to you. In this case, of course, I was writing an article, but the same type of thing could work. And in fact, I had people respond to me. They said they'd be happy to talk to me. So you can use the conference as a networking node, even if you're not there. It's a way to bring people together for you to find people to connect with. So don't worry if you can't go to the conference. Reach out to those speakers, reach out to those poster presenters, reach out to those people that you know are attending and ask them for a phone or a Skype appointment in the weeks following the conference so that you could talk a little bit about what it would be like to work there and see if there's an opportunity to collaborate. Now, at your current institution, there are also a lot of opportunities to network and establish yourself as a known quantity with representatives from that nation. First of all, I would definitely recommend getting on the colloquium committee or being involved with the colloquium committee so that you can be a part of when people are brought in to speak from different nations, and then you get a chance to interact with those people naturally because you're going to dinner with them, you're introducing them at the colloquium. So offer to host a colleague from targeted regions. Invite institutions to recruit on campus. What I mean by that is, if you could potentially invite Vizcaya from the Basque country or Talent Berlin to come to your campus to recruit, to give a talk. You could invite a university to come and give a recruitment talk, or a company to come and give a recruitment talk on campus in your department. It's a great way. That's a win-win right there, because you're providing them something of great value, the opportunity to promote themselves, and you're getting something in return, which is the chance to network with them and also to learn what it is that they're looking for. And they're going to be appreciative and grateful to you because of what you did, that you helped them do this promotion. So they're going to be thinking of you first as somebody that they could potentially collaborate with in the future. The overall goal, the overarching aim is thinking about what value can I and my current institution offer a regional organization, such as an economic development organization, a recruiting organization, or a representative or an institution such as a university, such as a company. What is the value that I could potentially provide where I am right now? And providing these people from these other nations, from these other institutions, the opportunity to come and give a colloquium, to recruit on campus, that is value added right there. Do that and you're going to see a lot of return on your investment. Interestingly, there are a lot of in-country resources for opportunities abroad, meaning that there's opportunities for you to connect with people from the nation that you want to go to while you're in the nation you happen to be in right now. And the best source to start with that is to look at the embassies and the consulates that are in your particular city or your region or your country right now. So what I mean by that is a couple of things. So I'll use myself as an example. So I'm an American citizen. So if I was interested in moving to London, for example, I would do two things, amongst many things I would do, but associated with embassies. Number one, I would take a look and see where are the UK embassies in the United States and consulates in the United States. Do they have events that I could potentially go to? That's a possibility. The second thing I would do is I would take a look and see I would connect with the embassies in London, the American embassy in London and the other American embassies in the United Kingdom, and tell them that I'm interested in moving to the UK and see if they would be interested in having a very informal conversation with me so I can learn a little bit more about what it's like to live in that city or in that country. This is really, really useful. I never really thought about the embassies as a networking node until a few years ago I went to a conference in Copenhagen, and this was the European Science Open Forum, which is, by the way, a fantastic conference to attend, and it's great because it is a multinational global conference. So people come from all over the world to this conference. I mean, of course, any science conference, you're going to find people from all over the world. But this is a general science conference. It's not very specific to medical physics or optics or something like that. So to find people from every continent, maybe even Antarctica, attending this conference is really, really interesting and also very valuable for somebody who's attending. So I was at this conference a few years ago. It was in Copenhagen, and I'm walking through the exhibit hall. And one of the booths was the American Embassy that's based in Copenhagen and serves all of the Scandinavian countries. And I was talking to the representative of that embassy, and I was asking her, you know, honestly, I was asking her, why are you here? Why are you having a booth at this conference? What is it that you're hoping to gain? What's your goal for being here? And it turned out that really what she was interested in was connecting with scientists that are from all over the world to benefit American interests in Scandinavia. So she was looking to create collaborations and to fuel collaborations and partnerships with scientists and engineers from all over the world, connect them with American scientists, and then potentially put them together for projects that could be done to benefit American interests in Scandinavia. That's when I really got to realize that embassies can really help you in terms of connecting and networking and introducing you to people that you can connect and network with for the international job search. And these can be your embassies, the embassies associated with your home nation in the nation you want to go to, or they could be the embassies associated with the nation that you're in, but are in your home nation. So there's a lot of different sort of iterations here. But take a look at that. Get on the listserv for the embassy, for the consulate. Go to their events. Volunteer if you can in that embassy, and be aware that there's surprising consulates and embassies that you might not have expected. For example, there are a lot of Canadians who live in Arizona, either full-time or live half-time. In the winter, they come to Arizona, and in the summer, they go back to Canada. And because there are so many Canadians in Arizona, there is actually a Canadian consulate in Arizona. I would have never expected that. There are a lot of consulates just scattered around, hidden in different states around the United States. And you'll find similarly, there are a lot of consulates and embassies in countries and regions that you might not have expected. So take a look at that. And I'm on a number of embassy listservs where I get invited to events. For example, probably from attending that same conference I mentioned, I ended up on the Swedish embassy based in Washington, D.C. I ended up on their listserv, so I get invited to Swedish embassy events in Washington, D.C. And I haven't been to one yet, but I'm really hoping to go. And I'm not Swedish, and I'm not moving to Sweden, but I'm still invited to attend. And I can just imagine the scientists and engineers who would be there. And be aware that embassies are specifically interested in talking to scientists and engineers. There's usually, not every embassy, but many embassies will even have a science policy person or a professional that's dedicated to helping to fuel scientific discovery or fuel scientific partnerships between scientists in the nation and scientists in the host country of the embassy, so you could connect with them too. They're looking for that type of collaboration. They're looking for that type of contact. And there's also a lot of foundations which are devoted to research via binational partnerships, which you could look into. For example, the American Friends of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation is specifically supporting research in Germany, but is bringing American scientists and engineers to support that, and similarly, the American Friends of Tel Aviv University in Israel. There's also alumni chapters. Of course, your alma mater will have chapters around the world. They may be formally organized by the university, or they may be informally organized by just people who are in the area via LinkedIn or Meetup. Take a look at the sections of professional organizations. So you might find, for example, the Mumbai Association of this Optics Society here in Mumbai. And when traveling to any city, reach out to any of these. Reach out to the alumni associations, the alumni chapters, the regional organizations of your professional association. Look into meetups and informal gatherings, anything that you can do to have that face time. And of course, there's a lot of online resources, LinkedIn groups. You can find groups that are associated with regions and institutions and professional societies, as well as the regional divisions of those professional societies. There's also LinkedIn groups that are devoted to recruiting for jobs in those countries. There's Twitter feeds, there's Facebook pages, there's blogs. So there's a lot of opportunities out there in terms of finding information, looking for people to connect with, and establishing yourself so that the opportunities are there when you need it. So in conclusion, we're in a changing world. It is changing seemingly every day. The global landscape, the economies are changing, the politics are changing, everything is changing. And so we need to just be aware of this rapidly changing landscape, be able to put together a plan for ourselves. So if we want to work in country A or country B, that even if there are these pushbacks or even if there are these perceived barriers like an economic downturn or a political issue or a crisis in a particular nation, that there's still a possibility for us to have a career, that there's still a possibility for us to have a job. It's not 100%, let's be honest, it's not 100%, but when we put together a networking strategy, the likes of what I've described to you for today, you give yourself a bigger chance and a better chance of making sure that you do have a safety net, so that if there is a crisis, if there is a change, if there is something, that dynamic situation that is shifting rapidly, you're able to move with that, and you're still able to have a safety net of people, places, organizations, and even other nations potentially that you could go to work. So we're going to start our plan early. We're going to start it now, even if we're not going to be graduating, even if we're not going to be leaving our nation that we're in, or we're not going to go to the nation we want to go for a couple of years. Start now, because it takes a lot of work. It takes a tremendous amount of networking. Networking, I always joke, is like a full-time job, and so to be able to put the time into it now, you'll see the time that you put into it now will definitely provide you with dividends later. Take advantage of in-country resources. Go to colloquia, go to conferences, volunteer to help solve their problems, volunteer for projects where there might not be an immediate return on your investment that's perceived, but you could see down the line that it could help you because you're establishing and really solidifying that connection and that partnership. Clarify your niche and your competitive advantage. Show people why you're wedded and committed to that region, that field in that region, and keep that networking going, because this is where you're going to get the biggest return on your investment. Remember, my estimation is that approximately 90% of jobs are hidden. They are only gotten through networking. They are only gotten through strategic self-promotion, marketing of your value, reaching out to people, asking for these informal conversations, exploring the potential to collaborate. This is what these people that I gave you examples of have done, and this is what you can do to successfully navigate an international career and job search from wherever you are on the globe. So I thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm going to stick around for some questions. This webinar has been recorded, as will our other webinars, and I hope you'll join me for 2 other webinars from the AIP Career Network. They're coming up, one in July and one in October. You will receive emails about this, so you will have a chance to join. These are free webinars as usual. There are a number of resources I wanted to draw your attention to. There's the Careers Toolbox for physics students. It's mentioned to be for undergraduate physics students, but quite honestly, I think that it's totally applicable and relevant to anybody. So whether you're a physics student, whether you're an undergrad or a graduate student or a postdoc, or you're not in physics at all, I still think that this is a very, very useful toolbox for you to take a look at. And that's available for free on the SPS, the Society of Physics Students National website. I write a career column for Physics Today, which you can access, and then of course my book Networking for Nerds, which goes into excruciating detail on the topics that we talked about today. I'm going to be sending you a link for our survey. I hope you'll provide me with feedback. I always aim to improve, and I want to hear what I can do better and what types of topics you're interested in the future. And with that, I want to thank you again for the kind opportunity and for your kind attention. I want to thank you for the honor and the privilege of having the chance to speak with you and share my thoughts about successfully navigating the international job search. And of course, I want to thank my partners, the AIP Career Network, and all the organizations and the publication for the logos that you see at the bottom of your screen. This concludes the formal part of our webinar. I'm going to stick around for questions, but thank you again so much, everybody, and I wish you all the best in your search. So we have a few questions. I'm going to see what people have to ask. Okay, I'm just taking a look to see what people have, what questions they have. And there's a lot of questions that are very, very specific to individuals. And so some people asking me, would I be available to help you with this? If you have a very specific and very private question, I am happy to see if I can answer that to you. So you can answer that for you via email. So you're welcome to email me. Somebody asked a question about visas. Somebody said, where do countries stand on work visas? Let's say an individual is from country A, receives their education in country A, and wishes to work in country B. Would a company be less likely to fund this individual due to the extra expense? If so, what is the best way to circumnavigate this particular issue? Or show this expense is worth the risk. And I'm glad you asked that question. And this actually goes to the whole point of the networking and establishing yourself as a known quantity. So companies will say, they might even say on their website, they might say, we are only going to give jobs. If you can apply for this job, we have advertised jobs, we are only going to entertain offers to people who are already have a visa. So they might say that you have to already have a visa if you're going to even apply for a position. But the thing is that rules are made to be broken. Rules are always could potentially always be broken if they see your value. And if they see you so valuable that if they don't hire you, the competition will, they will move mountains to get you. And that involves getting you the necessary visa, even if you can't get it yourself. So they're not going to say this out front. They're never going to tell you straight up, guess what, if you don't have a visa or if you come from this particular country, we're going to make sure you get a job anyway. They're never going to say that in the fine print. But in the interactions with them, if they get to know you and see what it is that you could really do for them, and you show them how you solve a very specific problem that they have not been able to solve with the talent pool that they have access to, they will do what they can do to get you. And that means that they will file the paperwork, they will spend the extra money, they will do what it is to get you the visa. So the best way to circumvent this issue or to show that the expense is worth the risk is to demonstrate like in the past, right? So do your networking now so that when the opportunity comes up, they already are thinking of you for the opportunity and they will file the paperwork for you. So I know we have a couple of other questions, but unfortunately we're out of time. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you have via email. And if I can be of any assistance to you in the future, please let me know. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I wish you all of the best. This concludes our webinar today. Thank you, AIP Career Network. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Best of luck.